Hey guys, it's me, and this is sort of a status update with a lot of craziness going on. First of all, a shout out to Donn over at Scale Miniature Techniques. Donn Yost is a master, and I have ordered his video, as everybody should. He is, one of the big authorities on model car building, and his YouTube channel is just starting out. Just starting out. He's got 500 subscribers, so I'm envious. But he is the master, and offers some DVD for you to learn from. Other guys like Dr. Cranky and some of the other YouTube scale model builders all speak with him with reverence. Donn is an excellent teacher from his videos, and quite a character. I think that's a fair assessment. I don't think he'd be too offended by me saying that. Donn speaks his mind, and it's refreshing. But I wanted to give him a shout out because I'm just starting this channel, and I run my mouth from time to time, and I made a comment on his channel, and he came over to mine and watched my videos and gave me encouragement. The fact that a guy of his caliber and his standing within the community, came over and gave me a thumbs up, man, that was a big morale boost. So, a shout out back to Donn. For being a great guy and doing what we should do on YouTube, which is encourage everybody to get in the hobby. I am never going to be Donn Yost or Dr. Cranky or any of those guys to teach you how to do shit. So I figure I could show you how to fuck up. And in keeping with my screw up video, I want to show you something. If you over sand and you go down below your paint coat, which is wont to happen if you are sanding your paint job, right? And you don't re-sand the entire thing, you will get something that, as Donn says, sticks out like a sore, sore thumb. Here is this body work for my car, the 37 cord, which I, showed you before in my previous screw-up video. There was a big gouge taken right about where my finger is here. And you can kind of see where I just sprayed one layer of primer over it, and then went ahead and hit it with this nice red color, which is mostly going to be covered over, so it's not a big deal. But I did want to show you. You see that sort of indentation there, right above my painted finger there. It's the painter's manicure. That is actually an indentation, and you actually, if you over sand and you have a few layers of paint, you got to kind of go back through and build up the hole with primer. It's very difficult to do with an airbrush. You can tape it off and kind of build it up that way. I come out of the miniature community, so I'm pretty comfortable with a brush. So I think where I've do that in the future, I can go in with some gesso, which will be a little thicker layer of primer than what I airbrush on, and put the gesso in there and sand it down. I think the key is maybe to have enough paint or enough layers of paint to sand, and also really seriously let your sandpaper do the work, because otherwise you get a gouge like Amateur Joe. This is going to get covered over, but it could be rather unsightly. A couple other things to note. You can see here I have done the next coats on my rear fenders, and they are looking pretty good. I also taped off and did this. I don't remember if I showed you in the last video, but I taped off and sanded this, and here's an example. You can see that white spot on the top. I got a little over aggressive on my sanding, and or even not. I mean, sometimes it's just you have a thin layer of paint and you have an edge, like that's near the edge of the fender, and it's just one of those things that's really hard to not to not sand away. So I'm going to actually have to sort of fill that in with gesso, and there's another one. See, look at that monster. See, Amateur Joe. I promised you fuck ups or screw ups. I should, remember to edit my thing for kids who might be watching, but yeah, there it is. And there's one of them. There's a major one. That's a pretty significant gouge there on the left fender that I got to go back in and rebuild. Now, luckily, it was only on my first coat of paint, so there's a couple more coats that go on top of that, but this is exactly what I'm talking about. Now, today in the mail, in theory, I should get my Micromark, 3,600 to 12,000 sandpapers, and we won't have a problem, because that was 1,000 grit, and at this scale with these models, it's a pretty aggressive grit. Sorry about the cough. I finished the doors, I got the base coat layer on the doors. You can see I did a little sanding down there, just down, actually, that's actually not a white belge, that's some silver. The doors are going to need another coat. I did the interior of the doors in this red, and that coat is really uneven. I'm okay with that because this is all going to be covered up. I'll talk about that in a minute, and I really just wanted to be sure that the edges, which might show through, particularly up at the top of the door, are visible. But, really, in all honesty, even though I did kind of a lazy way of doing this, one thing I can recommend is even if you're not doing interior trunks, or you're not, you're doing a curbside model and maybe you're not showing under the hood, I recommend painting that stuff anyway, particularly when you start out, because, you can figure out ways of coating and getting your airbrush technique down to where you can not have uneven coats like this. Like I said, I'm just being lazy, and it doesn't really matter a whole hell of a lot, because that's going to get covered up, and I'll talk about that in a second. I also picked a color for my interior. It is a bright red color. Now, this is glossy, and it will be matte down, but it seemed to go sort of close with the foam that I'm going to use for the interior upholstery on the doors. So this foam will actually go over this red part on the doors. I have been experimenting with painting foam, and you could see I could kind of adjust this color a little bit so it'll be stronger. Now, this seat is actually glossy, but at the end of the day, my seats will be this matte bright red leather, and they will provide sort of a color contrast to the darker red on the interior. And then there will probably be yet a third shade sort of in between the two for the carpeting. I haven't quite figured out how to do that. The upholstery that I am doing, as you can see here, is just some craft foam. And this is a technique that I saw at CT Speed Shop and Dr. Cranky's. I didn't do a straight edge line or anything. Those were just lazy cuts in there to see, with the burnisher sizes and get a feel for how to do things. I also put some paint over it to kind of see if I could adjust the color a little bit, because this is a really hard color of red to match with paints. It's kind of orangey and kind of dark. I mean, the airbrush paints tend to be a little transparent, so even though out of the bottle the paint that I used on this was probably close, with all the white primer underneath, it's just not going to look quite the same. So I asked Dr. Cranky if he could paint over it, and he said should be able to, so I tried that. So we'll see how that works. What I did was I took this area of the door, I covered it with some tape, and then cut out a template with the tape, put it over this, and trimmed it down. So these will be the actual door inserts. They're covered with tape right now, but when I get to the point of making the billowed look, it'll be good. That's what I will use. I still have yet to solve my question about door handles. I still got a hole in the door, but once I finish the doors, I will figure out the door handles, and we will move on to some assembly. Anyway, that's it for this one. Just a shout out to Donn again, and I will put a link to his channel and have you guys all check it out. And, again, here, my last screw-up shot. Anyway, this is it. Signing off for now. Thanks for watching, and have a good day.